Yeah, it's a bear market. Let's go ahead and sit on our hands and do nothing. Well, actually, guys, I want to go ahead and give you guys a strategy you guys can use with Uniswap V3 as well as other LP positions. But in particular, in today's video, we're mainly going to go over the Uniswap V3 position and how it works and how you can actually use this to your advantage in a bear market. We got the classic whiteboard we're going to help us today, and let's go and get into this sucker. All right, so the reason why this research stemmed out is, first, I wanted to feel something. I mean, it's like, dude, it's kind of like a bear market, things are going down. I still have some DeFi positions, but I'm like, bro, I got to feel something. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go and veg out a bit. Let's go and experiment with some of these different DeFi protocols and see what's up. I was actually pleasantly surprised. This is the Uniswap USDC ETH pair. This is for the 0.3% and this is the 0.05. It's actually paying out a 58%. So I sat there and I thought to myself and I was like, Tukes, what are you doing, bro? Like, why are you going side to side? Anyways, while she's doing her thing, I was like, okay, these yields are pretty interesting. I wonder if these A, can sustain, and B, is it better to just DCA or would it be better to LP? So I brought out a whiteboard and I started doing some math and I got out a couple of different tools so I can figure this out. So the first metric I needed to look at is, okay, is this APY/TVL sustainable? Is it maintaining this over a long period of time, or is this just a quick spurt because it's a bear market? So I went ahead and looked, and on DeFi Llama, I was able to find that the 0.05% USDC ETH pair was actually paying this average for about 2 or 3 months, and it was doing pretty well. So if you see here, it's around 26%, 48, 44, 26, but then you even have peaks to where it's paying like 156%. So on average, you could probably say this is going to pay you about 40 to 50% APY. So it checks out the first box. The APY is on average doing pretty well. So then I was like, okay, what is the TVL? So I went ahead and looked and I was like, okay, the TVL seems to be going down a bit and it goes up, it goes down. So it's actually sideways, which is a good thing. But remember, the TVL is denominated in dollars, so it's not in ETH terms. It does have 50% dollars, but it also has 50% ETH. So that goes to tell me that the TVL is actually sustaining. So here's an example of a TVL that you don't want to see. Of course, this is only the past 30 days, but you can see this is for the ETH ample pool. This is constantly going down. In fact, it's down about 70% from where it was at. So this is something you don't want to see. Whereas if you go back to the ETH one, you can see it's actually ranging between a healthy ratio. Give or take, it's about a 20 to 25% TVL differentiation from time to time. So let's go ahead and go over to our whiteboard, and first let's give you the situation of the example. The situation revolves around, is it better to buy Ethereum when we assume a year from now it's going to be trading at $1,000? As in, if it was trading at $2,000 right now. So a year from now, it's $1,000. Reason why we say a year is because we saw on Uniswap the APYs, the annual percentage yield, so that's per year, was around 50%. So we're going to go with 1 year terms. So let's assume ETH is going to trade at $1,000 in 2023 with our starting price at $2,000. We need to figure out, is it better to buy ETH a year from now at $1,000, or is it better to buy it now, or 50% of it now, and LP with it? So let's go and give you this scenario. We have 2023. This is just saying, okay, ETH is $1,000. We have 10 G's up front. We're going to be dealing with 10 grand, by the way. So we're going to use 10K as our parameter. So we're going to shell out 10K in 2023, and we're going to get 10 ETH for it. Good for you, Johnny. So we shell out 10K. We now have 10 ETH. Awesome. This is after 1 year. However, in 2022, what we're going to do is sell 50% of our 10K into ETH and 50% will be in a stable coin. Let's just assume we're going to use USDC like we saw in that Uniswap pair. So we can go ahead and say, all right, we now have 2.5 ETH. Man, guys, I thought I hit puberty already, but obviously not. So we have 2.5 ETH. And then we have 5,000 USDC. Awesome. Let's go ahead and LP with this in Uniswap. And we're going to assume it's around 50%. Of course, it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but on average, it's about 50% like we showed you on the chart. So at the end of the year, ETH is now $1,000. We LP'd with this, so we now have impermanent loss. What are we going to be left with in 2023? You can see here in 2023, we're going to be left with 3.5 ETH and 35 USDC. I'll show you guys the impermanent loss calculator so you guys can see what's up on that. Now, this is what we're going to be left with. So now you're saying to me, Drake, what the snap? You only have 7 ETH. It was obviously better to buy at the end of the year. I agree with you. You only have 7 ETH, but remember, you got paid 50% that whole year to LP with that position. So in reality, let's just be conservative and we'll take 50% of 7 ETH instead of 10 ETH. Because in this situation, we would actually end up with 12 ETH because 50% times 10K is 5K, and you guys can do the math. Let's just assume, based on these prices, we're going to do the 50% on top of these prices. So we would still end up better. We would end up with about 10.5 ETH total. Now, why is it 10.5? Well, what is 7 times 50%? Or 7 divided by 2? That's 3.5. 7 plus 3.5 equals 10.5 ETH. So if we LP now, we're going to go ahead and have 10.5 ETH. If we were like, nah, bro, I'm going to wait because I think it's going to $1,000, we're going to have 10 ETH then. You are actually better off LPing. Now, hang on. This is not without risk. There are some pros and cons to this, and I'll go ahead and go over that later in this video. So before you pull the trigger, make sure you guys understand what you're getting into. So let me go ahead and show you guys the data on the impermanent loss calculator so you guys can see I'm not blowing smoke. Like I showed you here, ETH at $2,000 going to $1,000. So this is a 50% price change. You can see here that our impermanent loss is only going to be 5.2%. Of course, these are in $1,000 terms. So as you guys can see here, after the price change, you would have 3.5 ETH and 35 USDC. The reason why it's 3.5 is because this total showing here is only in $1,000. Remember, we're dealing with $10,000. So now let's go ahead and go over to the flip side crypto. This is where the 50% is coming from. This is at $13.94 per day at a 50% yield. This is on Uniswap V3. This is for 10 Gs, and this is for the USDC wrapped ETH pair. So that's a couple of the data points that you guys can use. Now, hang on. Let's go and go over the pros and cons. The first is that you have exposure to the asset just in case it decides to gigapump on you. So if ETH wants to go to like 10 Gs, yes, you are going to see impermanent loss, but what if you're that guy who is sitting on the sidelines and is like, I'm buying it when, well, it's going to be $1,000 in 2023. Time will tell. We'll see what happens, of course, but this is just an example. Now, second, if it doesn't go too crazy, this could potentially earn more than if you were just buying later. So we didn't even go over the scenario of if ETH is trading at 2,000 and now it trades at 1,500, you actually make even more with the LP. Yes, you lose a little bit to impermanent loss, but you also get those swap fee rewards. So that is something to keep in mind. Third, you get to learn how these things work. So you understand how these LP positions work, you understand how impermanent loss works, and you get the school of hard knocks. That is just how it rolls. Sometimes these lessons are expensive, sometimes they pay you. It's one of those things you don't know till it happens. And the next pro is that instead of getting full exposure to the downside, you also lose exposure to the upside, is that it's lessened. So it's less extreme. So say, for example, ETH goes down 50% or it goes up 50%. You actually only have a 25% exposure to that. Because remember, these LP pairs are 50-50. Now with Uni V3, of course, you can concentrate your liquidity in a certain situation. And yes, you would earn more, but you potentially will see impermanent loss much quicker. So be careful with those different ranges. And you can use these LP positions to auto buy the dips and auto sell the rips for you and get paid to do it. Now let's go over the risks and the cons of this situation. The first is impermanent loss. If you don't understand what these ranges are, or if you don't understand what impermanent loss is, I highly recommend you try with a little amount. Let me go ahead and show you guys the effects of impermanent loss. This is just for a 50% change. Now, when the change is a lot larger, you see more significant impermanent loss. So let's say, for example, this is $500. So a 75% change. You actually see an impermanent loss of 20%. So the impermanent loss is actually more intense. So in theory, when you're taking this LP position, you do not want a crazy amount of volatility. So that is something to keep in mind as well. So starting with a little bit, just so you can understand it, is one of the best things that you can do. Second, you also have the stablecoin peg risk. If you're using USDC, DAI, Frax, any of these different stablecoins, of course, they are going to have the peg risk. Third is that the swap volume just drops off a cliff. If it goes to zero, well then it goes to zero and you have no swap volume. So you're just going to see the impermanent loss and, well, you didn't get paid to do it. So make sure you guys check to see if the volumes are sustainable and at least can sustain. And even when you check that, they still may not be sustainable. So look for a token that has high volume and that has a good amount of TVL. Usually ones that have lower TVL are less reliable to keep that APY/APR. Usually when it's a more popular coin, more people will provide liquidity and then you will have more swaps and more interest in that token. You can check out DeFi Llama like we did for some of the different yields. Make sure you toggle on that button to turn on the yields. This is the little button toggle right here, by the way. So look, DeFi, and then you go to percent yields. This is the toggle button. Just click that and it'll take care of that for you. Now, Uniswap isn't the only one. Of course, you have things like GMX, you got Balancer, SushiSwap, just to name a few. I'll go over some of those later in other videos, but I just wanted to get this general concept across to you guys so you guys can understand this. Of course, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And let's go ahead and hit you guys with that wisdom one-liner. By the way, guys, if you guys enjoyed this video and I brought any value to you guys, make sure you guys smash up the like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me what you thought of the video. Did you think it was junk? Did you think I don't know, I shouldn't even talk about this subject? Or would you like to hear more on this type of stuff? Let's go ahead and hit you guys with that wisdom one-liner. Proverbs chapter 12, verses 5. The plans of the righteous are just, but the advice of the wicked is deceitful. Let's be good, be righteous. Let's see you guys in the next one.